We are currently sitting in no man's land, both in terms of the stock market, but also the general American economy. We fell 20% in a matter of a month as Trump announced his tariff war against the rest of the world. Since then, the market has rebounded 9% in a matter of a few weeks, and we're really sitting at this point where we could go into a full-on recessionary scenario where the market fails to reach all-time highs, and we have this slow grind down in stock prices and also things like the health of the jobs market over the next really 12 months. Or this could be a fantastic buying opportunity in terms of doubling down, buying your favorite companies at the moment, and we could see the stock market return to all-time highs in the next really 6 months. In today's video, we're going to go through the positive and the negative news. We've got data that supports both scenarios, and then by the end, you can start to think of which case you think is more likely. If you like that concept, please hit the like button and comment your thoughts down below, as it's one of the only ways you can support a new and growing YouTube channel. First up, I've got here the results of the AAII investor survey, but I've gone throughout history and done a bit of work for us. So the survey has been simple for the longest time. Are you bullish, bearish, or neutral about the American stock market over the next 6 months? So I've taken all those responses and I've ranked them from the most negative to the least negative. So we see here the most negative time period was in 2009, and 70% of people were negative about the stock market. And the list on the screen here is the top 27 most negative weeks, or in other words, the top 2% of most frightened stock market periods. And the whole point of this was to look for the 2025 time period, or really the last 2 months. And something really interesting that pops out here is out of the top 27 most negative weeks, 7 of those all come from the past 2 months alone. In other words, 1/3 of the most fearful stock market periods in modern times have all come from the last 2 months. If we take into account the extent of the negativity, but also consistency, I would actually argue this is worse than every other time period, basically besides the worst times of the GFC in 2008, 2009. Another aspect I love about this survey is every single week they ask investors a slightly different question, just seeing what the sentiment is like out there in the community. And this week's question was, what type of stocks are you buying right now, or at least favoring? And we see here that the most popular option is a mixture. That's pretty basic, but we see here dividend and value companies now make up around 50% of potential buyers in the market, whereas only around 10% of respondents are looking to buy growth stocks. If we think back over the last 15 years, really since the GFC bottom, growth stocks have way outperformed value type companies. You know, people have considered buying Googles and Amazons way more than buying something like a cigarette company or maybe Coca-Cola. However, that environment has now totally changed. You are now 4 times more likely to buy boring, safe companies that grow 3% every year over the things like Amazon or maybe Nvidia. Those high growth tech companies have been fully thrown out the window. And that brings us to one of the big takeaways in this video is if we want to buy investments that are on sale or cheap right now, if we do manage to avoid recession, this could be one of the fantastic setups you only get once every few years to buy these high growth tech companies that are expected to grow profits 15-20% per year for the next 5 to 10 years. And we're also getting them at a cheap price. However, nothing is so simple when it comes to investing and economics. I do have here a bunch of clips in terms of the tariff war that Trump is really still waging on China. Now, the first clip I've got here is with Trump, and his rhetoric towards China is probably the most positive and open to negotiation that it has been for the entirety of 2025.
I don't want them to go higher because at a certain point you make it where people don't buy. So I may not want to go higher, or I may not want to even go up to that level. I may want to go to less because, you know, you want people to buy. And at a certain point, people aren't going to buy.
How long these negotiations are with China? Are they in the early stages, or are you inching closer now to actually making a deal on tariffs?
I think that we will make a deal with China. I think we've had some very good talks, but we will have some very good talks remaining.
The second clip I have here is with China's side of the argument and how really they have a tiny ask. America, all they have to do is stop talking shit about China and stop trying to bring down the CCP, and then yeah, maybe we can make a deal.
This marks China's first time privately expressing a desire to negotiate. Bloomberg on April 16th quoted a source that said China wants to see the Trump administration take several measures before agreeing to trade talks. These include controlling disparaging remarks from cabinet members to show more respect. Beijing also wants the U.S. to appoint a presidentially supported negotiator and help prepare an agreement that Trump and President Xi can sign when they meet. The source also said, in addition to wanting a unified message from the U.S. government, Beijing officials want to know if the U.S. is prepared to address some of China's concerns. One major concern is that Chinese officials believe U.S. policies are aimed at containing and suppressing China's modernization. Additionally, China wants the U.S. to address national security issues, especially the Taiwan issue. China insists it won't provoke any action on Taiwan, but will respond if provoked.
So we have all of these opportunities to see a bump up in economic sentiment and the stock market prices every time we hear about America and China meeting to discuss terms or maybe deals getting announced with other countries. They're all going to be chances to see the stock market really climb a wall of worry. However, as we see with this final clip here with Trump, he has still been very clear for national security purposes, there are going to be bare minimum tariffs.
On steel, we're getting 25% on aluminum. We're going to have some other things that we're going to be adding in the not too distant future because we want them to be made here. The medicines, the drugs, pharmaceuticals are going to be done, and computer chips, etc., etc.
In some ways, 2025 could be a fantastic year depending on what company you are or what company you work for. For example, if you're a company that is in the semiconductor industry, like Nvidia, then these sell-offs in stock prices, still around 33% down from all-time high prices, maybe that's justified. If we expect around a 25% flat tariff on all fancy computer chips coming into America, then we could expect to see the profitability of companies like Nvidia, but AMD as well, they could drop down 20-30% just as they eat some of the cost of tariffs and some of their customers are no longer interested based on these higher tariffed prices. And so here we are at the end of the video with our two scenarios we could face. The stock market, if it sniffs out that we're going to avoid recession or at least have a tiny shallow one, what we're going to see is higher highs and higher lows in the market. As we continually see good news being announced, we're going to have these pop-ups in the stock price, maybe a few weeks of digestion, but overall moving up higher in the market. Or if we do go into recession, there's too many jobs lost because of government spending cuts, maybe we have no trade deals getting announced. Overall, this would put us in a deep recessionary scenario, and we are probably only halfway in terms of the stock market drop that we should expect. So comment down below what scenario you think we're going to see. I want to thank my YouTube members who help support the channel. I've got these two other videos here for you to watch about the tariff situation and a potential investment. See you next time, guys. Bye.